Good evening and welcome back. So this was something that I was unsure of making a video about this evening, but decided in the end, yeah, let's do it. It's something that has a far more emotional effect from just the intense anger that it causes. So if you're already in a bad place, maybe come back to this later when you're feeling a bit more calm, because as we see here, and you've probably already read, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris say Trump has left the United States in tatters. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that just says, "What? How can you say this? This is clearly false. What? What are you talking about? How is this true?" No, we're actually going to delve into this and explain how they are lying the entire way through. They do not give a shit about what is actually happening, and instead decide with that shit-eating grin to try and divide the nation even more, and in so doing so, try and tear apart every civilized society in the world at the moment. That America tends to lead the way, and they're trying to rip that apart in order to affect every other country as well, while not giving any recollection whatsoever to what the developed nations have done in the past. And yes, I know this is going to be America-centric despite being British. I understand that. But given that America has a far greater influence than the United Kingdom at the moment, and hey, hopefully that'll change back to the proper way of doing things in the near future, but for the time being, they clearly are the world leader. So it is worth addressing what is going on there, because it seems to be floating across the pond over here, with the communist terrorist Black Lives Matter movement leading the charge in that regard. And no, I don't mean Black Lives Matter as a statement. I think we can all agree that all lives matter. Yes, this isn't just humans either, but also moving into animals as well, that lives matter, that life does have an intrinsic value. And ending a life is something to be taken seriously. Or just skipping over a life is something that does actually take philosophical thought. It isn't something to just end on some arbitrary basis. It actually does require thought. And particularly in humans, why the hell are you valuing a certain life lesser than another? I'd suggest that it would come down to saying, well, what has this individual done? What are their own individual actions that makes them individually different, that makes their life worth less? That I do not believe that all lives are equal. No, not at all. Not even in the slightest. If you've got somebody that is helping millions or billions of people compared to somebody who is intent on killing tens or hundreds or thousands of people, then yes, I would say that the person helping out has a higher intrinsic value than the person who is intent on dragging things down and destroying them. Which brings us into a brilliant segue of what the Democrats are trying to do. So for whatever fucking reason, and I should probably scroll down from the shit-eating grin from Kamala Harris, that they seem to try to suggest that despite everything they've done to tear apart America, it is actually Donald Trump's fault. And the amount of gaslighting that is going on here is really unparalleled. So as they say, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and running mate Kamala Harris have attacked so-called whining President Donald Trump as an incompetent leader who has left the US, quote, in tatters. And as far as whining goes, that is essentially pertaining to his Twitter thread. So, because of the majority in the House from the by-election, that now that the Democrats control it instead of the Republicans, as tends to be the way, that in the midterms that you're going to have the opposing party get the majority, because people are never happy with the status quo, apparently, that of course you're not going to be able to get anything through. Donald Trump is trying to subvert that by going through Twitter, although he should clearly be using Parler instead, in order to get his message heard by the voters, and not just the voters, but by every individual in America. Because I know this has been said so many times before, but it is still vitally important to mention. He has hardly anything to gain from being president of America. It's obviously a pay cut. He's obviously more divisive. What is he getting from being president of America? Sure, he's being put in the history books as president of America, but that is the only thing that is guaranteed. And even running, that wasn't guaranteed. Now it is. But hey, would you rather be not remembered at all, or remembered as somebody who was awful and just a negative on the world? Chances are you would rather have your mistakes forgotten than remembered forever. So he's got a lot to lose as well. And bear in mind, the alternative was as an incredibly successful businessman. And yes, I know he had a very generous gift or investment or grant, whatever you wish to call it, from his father. But nonetheless, turning that into a multi-billion-dollar empire is bloody good going. No matter what. So yeah, he's actually done alright for himself. And I know that business is not everything that the government is about, and just having somebody who's good in business doesn't mean that they're going to be good in the leadership role. However, having somebody who has not been indoctrinated with politics and seizing power by force, but instead has got to win people over to them by coaxing them over and encouraging them while allowing them to pick other options, is a tremendously better option. Because it isn't saying, pick us or we'll jail you or shoot you, but instead it is saying, please pick us because we're going to give you a better option and you're going to like your time with us. So it's a good choice. It's such a huge difference that I think so many career politicians don't wish to see the difference, because then they realize that they are fucked because of their life choices. And nobody likes a midlife crisis, understanding that what they've devoted their lives to has just gone counter to what they're attempting to achieve. Nobody wishes to acknowledge that. And that is why existential dread is actually a good thing at an early age. Because then you go, are the things that I'm valuing actually worthwhile? Maybe not. Maybe I should do something else that has a greater intrinsic value for me than trying to get external appreciation and congratulations from these other people that I don't know and I don't care about. Maybe it's something worth considering. But back to the topic in hand before we get too sidetracked in philosophy here. So as they say, the pair held their first campaign event together a day after Biden unveiled Harris as his number 2. Not good phrasing, number 2 considering she's brown. So at a high school in Mr. Biden's home state of Delaware, he said, "This is a serious moment for our nation." And if I slur my words, I'm just trying to recreate Biden's atmosphere. Miss Harris, a California senator, is the first black woman and South Asian American to serve in the role. Now, with the intention of being so inclusive, would you wish to garner a thought as to how inclusive these particular subsections wish to be of other subsections? But moving on before we get into just the catastrophe that intersectional identity is. So, they said, speaking from the gymnasium of the Alexis First DuPont High School, Mr. Biden said, "The choice we make this November is going to decide the future of America for a very, very long time." What does he mean by that? Well, he basically just means the Supreme Court judges, that chances are Trump will be able to pick another one or two. And yes, I know that so far the choices he's made haven't actually gone as expected. And despite the Brett Kavanaugh hearings of suggesting he was such an evil being and would be against abortion in its entirety, I haven't heard anything that would actually substantiate that claim. Has he made the news for any of his actual actions? No, he hasn't. Has he made any controversial decisions? No, he hasn't. Has he just maintained the status quo of keeping Roe v. Wade as it was? Yes, he has. So that seems to be quite a disappointment. So if you're suggesting that it's going to decide the future of America for a very, very long time, does that then mean that you wish to get on there in order to pick a Supreme Court judge who's going to be far more communist. But then how the hell are you going to get it through Congress and the Senate? Doesn't seem very likely. So he continued, Donald Trump has already started his attacks, calling Kamala, quote, nasty, whining about how she is, quote, mean to his appointees. And the substantiation for this is because they've just pointed out her hypocrisy and obviously how she's been treating the people below her, which is never a good stance. But also to say from a policy perspective, which is what you should be looking at, she hasn't just been flip-flopping, which would be somebody who is weak-willed, but instead tried to pander, just like Hillary Clinton did by saying she carried hot sauce around in her handbag, trying to appeal to the black voters. That Kamala Harris has done the same, saying, oh yes, I listened to Tupac, and I inhaled marijuana. Well then, just a few years later, was putting heavy sentences in for anyone who possessed marijuana. And yes, she was listening to Tupac before he released music, so good fucking luck explaining that, but they're not going to mention that here, of course they're not. But that's why I'm here. You're welcome. Hit like and subscribe if you want to hear more. He continued, it's not a surprise because whining is what Donald Trump does best, better than any president in American history. And it is so cute to try and see somebody else adopting Donald Trump's tactics. So cute. He called Joe Biden sleepy, but now he should really call him creepy instead. But then we've got Lying Ted as Lying Ted Cruz as well, and Low Power Jeb. But the point of his labels is that they're succinct and memorable and accurate. And therefore, you can discount your opposition very, very easily. That is why he does it. And then, by his opposition going, actually, yes, my opposition, you have a good tactic. I'm going to try the same thing against you, even though you've practiced it for decades, and I've probably just got people writing this for me because I can't string a coherent thought together anymore. It is not going to work. How the hell are you going to call Donald Trump whining? That is not an accurate depiction of what he does. People don't think of it as whining. They've called him bombastic and racist and sexist. Not whining. If you want to pick a label, pick an accurate label. For fuck's sake, Joe. Get your writers on board. It says, is anybody surprised that Donald Trump has a problem with a strong woman or strong women across the board? If you look at his press briefings, I mean, obviously you can look at Betsy DeVos, for example, or Colin McKinney, if you wish. And if you look at the press briefings, then the way that they've just pushed back against what they said, particularly against coronavirus, and with them saying that, do you want to retract what you've said earlier about coronavirus not being a problem? Now it is. Not wearing masks, you should wear masks, you shouldn't. Anything like that, then I think he's perfectly fine with having a strong woman, or strong women across the board. And yes, he is. And bear in mind that this is actually a success for you. And that is actually what you should be focusing on here. Because he's decided we could go solely meritocratic, but instead we should actually focus on people who aspire to these unalienable characteristic religious-like preferences that the left have in order to appeal to them, hence including the women. And the worst thing about this is that the women he's appointed are actually very good at what they do. They do not bloody need quotas or a helping hand in order to get to the place that they have gotten. And yet, of course, because of the environment, the bloody cultural Marxist left have decided to encourage, they're going to be thinking, well, could there be a guy that does this better, and have they just picked her because she's a woman? And that is the worst thing about it most. You have so many capable women available, and yet, because you fostered the environment of not picking based on merit and a meritocratic basis, that instead you've decided it's got to be a woman, or it's got to be a woman of colour, as Joe Biden has decided for his VP. In which case, nobody's thinking Kamala Harris is the best pick, just, oh, she's the best of the limited opportunities that were given to the people that he could be running with. And therefore nobody's thinking, she's great, she's clearly perfect, she's clearly the ideal candidate. It's just, he's pushed himself in a corner so much that I suppose she will do. And that has overlapped into Donald Trump's way of doing things with picking women, which may still be the best for the job. So if you want to pick it correctly, you do not say he's got a problem with strong women across the board, because he clearly bloody doesn't with who he's picked for his representatives, with his press briefing, for education, whatever it might be. That is not the route you go down. You don't take it as an attack against him, you take it as a victory. It is where you'd want to say he's full of bluster and he pretends to be strong, but he's not as strong as he says, because he's caved to our demands of picking these quotas, of pushing these women into the spotlight. That is the best you've got. And yes, it will fall down by then it seeming like you're dragging down the women instead of encouraging them for where they are and suggesting that they only got the job because they're women. But that is what you want anyway. So go for it. Don't be concerned that that's going to put off moderate voters, because they are the exact policies that you want. And if you are concerned that's going to put voters off, then stop bloody encouraging these policies. You fuckwads. It really is as straightforward as that. And until they get through the thick skull, it's going to be what keeps happening. So instead, they're saying that the women that he has appointed are not strong women at all. I suppose they're just women. They're just all right. In which case, why were they chosen? Are you saying that he would pick women because they're women instead of them being good for the job? Because then he seems to be doing exactly what you want him to be doing anyway. You cannot win with this perspective. He's already got you fucked. Don't even try on this approach. But he's also, Joe Biden this is, attacked Mr. Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic, climate change, the unemployment rate, and his politics of racist rhetoric that appeals to division. And I've got to laugh at this, because it is utter horseshit. So, handling of the coronavirus pandemic. So initially, Joe Biden was saying this is xenophobic, we shouldn't be cutting off people from China, we shouldn't be trying to quarantine, we shouldn't be trying to do a lockdown, and, well, now he's saying the complete opposite. So either he admits he was wrong, or he was right in the beginning, in which case Donald Trump is wrong now. In which case he should have stuck to his guns. But he's not. Instead, he's saying that Trump should have done more sooner. Which goes exactly against what Joe Biden was saying at the exact same time. So that's not a horseshit. Climate change. What does that mean? He's against the so-called Green New Deal, which is just communism disguised as climate change activism. And no, I'm not being hyperbolic. It is that anybody who wants a job should have guaranteed income from the government, no questions asked. That is what the Green New Deal says. And they don't care about nuclear either. They're just going for solar and wind and tidal and that kind of thing. Things that are going to be incredibly difficult to recycle, especially when it comes to batteries. They're not forward thinking. And although, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I do admire Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for saying this is where we want to be, and it may not seem possible yet, but that's to be expected. We've got to find a way to make it happen. I do admire that. That yes, anything radical, anything exceptional, anything fantastic will not seem possible at the time it's proposed. Of course, and you will want to find a way to do that. Yes, I do actually agree with that completely. But legislating it from a government perspective is not the way to go about it. Because if there is a way to do it, people will find a way to do it because they will find profit in doing so. Because they're making more people's lives better. That is what profit means. It doesn't mean a rich person taking all the money. The only way they can make their money in the first place is by making other people's lives better. And I don't bloody understand why the Democrats don't understand this. Considering that they're trying to say the government should be bigger and they should get paid more. It's like, well, why should you get paid more? And they're saying, well, it's because I'm in charge of more things and making more people's lives better. Well, that's exactly the point of the fucking capitalists. But instead of saying that we deserve your money, we're saying that we're going to earn it and you're going to be happy in the transaction that you make. Why is that so difficult to understand? And yet, the right wing says we want individual freedom and the right to bear arms. We want to be able to shoot people who trespass and threaten our lives. And the left say, well, no, you can't do that. We want us to decide exactly what you do with your life. So some godforsaken reason, the right, which is capitalist, which is saying that it's all got to be free choices that you make, and you've got to choose with informed consent of what you decide and what you do, that apparently that's the evil version of things, compared to the left who say, do what we want or we will shoot you, and we have taken away your gun so that you can't defend yourselves. How does that add up? But then he goes on to say the unemployment rate, which I'm going to twin in with his politics of racist rhetoric that appeals to division, and say, well, he's got the record low black unemployment in America in history, so fuck you. That's factually inaccurate. That is completely false. And then if you want to look at who is causing the riots from the George Floyd death, that is an overdose death, essentially suicide from a career criminal. That's what it is. A career criminal killed himself, and yet 28 people are killed because of that. And that's what the left are encouraging, not the fucking right. Not Donald Trump, who's actually lowered the unemployment in the black community as lowest it's ever been. No. So then trying to say that it appeals to division, what upside down, backwards land are you living in? It's completely false. You're encouraging this racist division, just like you did when Barack Obama was president. That you're saying that black people can't get ahead because of their race. And not because that maybe there are more intrinsic problems based on single-parent households. Maybe it's more to do with the education from a younger age. You're not mentioning that at all. And I think that the best case you have of getting elected from that standpoint is to get rid of the war on drugs. If you can get rid of the war on poverty at the same time, that's fantastic, but I know that the left aren't willing to do that. But if the right can, if they can get rid of the war on poverty, that is something that actually appeals to them from an economic standpoint of saying, take care of yourself, take care of your community. We're not going to have anything to do with it. It's up to you where you want your money to go. And then they should also say, from an individual standpoint, of saying they don't want government involvement, that we're going to get rid of the war on drugs, because again, it's up to you, it's up to your community on what you want to do to your own body. And it's as simple as that. And if you get rid of the war on poverty, then you're going to get rid of single-parent households, in which case you're not going to have to worry about the war on drugs, because the young children are going to have a male role model in their life of which they can look up to, and therefore they won't be making such bad choices. But coming to the podium, Ms. Harris said, I am ready to get to work. I know this feels like a munted news segment from Dr. Anna McCann at this point. So the 55-year-old former prosecutor told reporters, just skip over the former prosecutor bit, this is a moment of real consequence for America. Everything we care about, our economy, our health, our children, the kind of country we live in, it's all on the line. I agree. I actually agree. Good stuff. She continued, America is crying out for leadership. I agree. Yet we have a president who cares more about himself than the people who elected him. And I don't agree. He's trying to allow people to get a livelihood in order to live, in order to make a living, in order to support themselves and their families. And you're trying to encourage a lack of police in the neighborhoods so people aren't safe. They can't go to job. They don't have a job for the business because it's been burnt down. And you don't give a shit about that. And that mainly affects the black neighborhoods. You don't give a shit about that. So no. She continued. He, Mr. Trump, inherited the longest economic expansion in history from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Would you like to fuck off? In Obama's credit, he only raised minimum wage once, which is not a democratic policy, but that's what he did. You came out of a crash from 2008, which gave you good opportunities. You squandered it. Didn't do such a good job. But you didn't make a devastating situation worse than it had to be. So, well done for that. Well done for not increasing minimum wage, which I know is a democratic policy to actually increase it, but well done for not doing it because, well, you did it once. but that definitely helped. Well done for talking the talk to pretend that you're doing things well, but not actually doing anything of any substance. In which case, yes, you left things alone, you did it. Except, of course, for things like DACA and the like, and anchor babies. But to try and suggest this from the longest economic expansion in history, it is really down to what time points you wish to pick and on which particular points you wish to pick. I mean, if you're going bear in mind inflation, then from a net amount, you would bloody well hope that every new term is going to have better growth than the previous one on a net amount because of inflation. But then, like everything else he inherited, he ran it straight into the ground. Are you shitting me? From the moment it was known that he elected, the stock market picked up. We've seen the low unemployment happening. We've seen more jobs coming back to America. And I'm not a fan of protectionist policies either, but it seems like you are? I don't understand. But yes, he didn't like China, which actually proved to be correct. So perhaps I'm wrong, but we'll have to see how it turns out with the trade war there. But I think the coronavirus pandemic will work in his benefit for that. But running it straight into the ground. No, is he spending too much on the military? Quite possibly. Is the deficit too high? Definitely. Is he paying back the national debt at a reasonable rate? No. So, yes, certainly. Did the tax cuts help the middle class in particular? Yes. Did that help boost the economy? Yes. Did that lower unemployment? Yes. So where are you getting it from that he ran it straight into the ground? Are you saying it was in bedrock initially, and therefore running it straight into the ground was a long way up, in which case, fair enough? She added, this is what happens when we elect a guy who just isn't up to the job. Our country ends up in tatters, and so does our reputation around the world. And this is gaslighting at its finest. This really bloody is. I know it's a long video, so thank you for staying with me. But when they're purposefully, for the last 4 bloody years, trying to tear them apart at every opportunity that they can get, and not caring about what is accurate, factually true, or anything like that, but instead just trying to divide people based on whatever bloody thing that they can do. Say, oh, you're Mexican, therefore America is bad. Black America is bad. A woman, America is bad. White man, well, then you're bad. Whatever it is, they're just trying to drag down everybody until we reach the lowest common denominator, which is what communism is all about anyway. But trying to suggest that it is Donald Trump's fault, when what he's been going for is personal responsibility, that is to say that you are responsible for your own actions and you can't blame anybody else for it, and to try to suggest that the country ends up in tatters and the reputation around the world because of him, after all you've been bloody doing, no chance. How much gaslighting can there be that you are constantly pushing out the message that America is a bad place, America is evil, America has never been good, and America must pay reparations, even though Kamala Harris's fucking family own black slaves? The hypocrisy there, it just doesn't end. Just look into it more and more, and you'll find more and more hypocrisy. It's complete utter bullshit. But yeah, apparently Donald Trump is the problem, instead of you just making up lies like the Steele dossier about him in order to try and ruin America's reputation. Did you not think that bloody well through, that if you ever win another election again, when let's pray to God that you don't, that you're going to be inheriting this country that you said was a complete shithole for the past few years because Orange Man bad, and that quite literally is all you have to do on it. All the statements you have that are bad about his character, about things he's apparently said and things he's done, are all lies. There is no concrete evidence for anything you've bloody claimed bad about him at all. Ever. Ever. It's complete lies, and you're trying to drag down the entirety of America because of it. So, how dare you suggest that it's because of Donald Trump? Because it really isn't. It's because you've been trying to libel him and slander him as much as you can for as long as you can, since it seemed that he was going to be the winner in the election anyway. It does not come down to politics anymore. You are just doing personal attacks for your own political gain, and that is disgusting. You do not give a shit about America. You do not care whatsoever. To try to suggest that Donald Trump cares more about himself than America compared to the complete shit-slinging that you are doing is very rich. It is projection at its finest. So, no. I do not care for what you're saying. You are full of shit. You have no idea what you're talking about. And, again, pray to God that you do not win in November. Because you do not deserve it. You are trying to tear America apart. You do not give a shit about the individuals living there. All you're looking for is to tear the country apart in order to gain more power, and in order to be voted in even more power, to be in control of even more stuff, to try and fulfill your weird bloody fetish fantasies about controlling people's lives. And you don't deserve to, so I hope you lose. But for everybody else, as always, until next time, have a good one.